Welcome back to the Wildboro podcast, and welcome inside the dome, Christian.
Good to be here, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. I've been looking forward to having you on the show. I think you're a really interesting person, and you're actually one of the first people I met out here. You were living in my neighborhood at the time. I moved here a year ago, and we went and played soccer in Bisbee together one day.
That's right.
We've spent Thanksgiving together 2 years in a row at a great community potluck, and you struck me as someone very involved with the local issues here as an activist, and also just somebody who wants to do the opt-out build. There's a lot of things I want to hear from you about your story, and I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you whatever you want to hear. Let's dive in.
Let's start about how did you end up in Cochise County?
Yeah, I got here in 2020, coincidentally, right when the pandemic was kicking off. Like the lockdowns were starting, so I want to say April or May, maybe April. April, May, yeah, April, I'd say. And I moved out here sight unseen. I heard a description of this property that my friend's friend was trying to rent, and it was like 120 acres, and there's all these buildings on it. And I was like, man, this sounds cool. Cheap rent. I was tired of living in the big cities. I had previously lived up at this place, Arco Santi. Really, really cool place in Cordes Junction, about halfway between Sedona and Phoenix. My sister was a manager at this annual music festival there called Form. And so that's when I first learned to love the high deserts of Arizona. I was like, I like this. I like the spaciousness, being able to see forever in every direction. And so yeah, I just had a good feeling about it, and moved out here, planning on doing music and setting up various little studio spaces to work on sculpture, work on music, maybe a few other things. I was living in my Sprinter van at the time. I was like lugging a giant 3D printer around. Like I was not trying to live a van life. So I was like, all right, we'll try this out, see how it goes. And then, yeah, I got sucked into all sorts of commitments and then interests. And so happy I kind of ended up here on the Kismet path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious a little about your background before you came out here. You were just mentioning that you were involved in the music scene in Austin, Texas for a while. And can you just tell us about maybe what did you do in your life before Cochise County?
Yeah, like a lot of artists, I did all sorts of stuff, held down basic jobs while, spending all my free time working on creative things, mostly music. I grew up in Virginia, and a few of my friends moved down to Austin, Texas. So about a year and a half after high school, I hitched down there, and yeah, just trying to do as much music as I could. Um, yeah, odd jobs, working at cafes, working at a bookstore. One thing that is kind of relevant to my life now is I spent a year doing an AmeriCorps program, which is it's typically you're doing outdoor. Well, AmeriCorps is kind of a broader federally funded programs or semi-federally funded programs, typically oriented for young people, young adults, 18 to 28, I think is the age range. And this one was all environmental work, a lot of trail work in city and state, and even a national park in Texas, Big Bend National Park. So I spent the whole year working outdoors, building trails, repairing trails, doing basic carpentry, doing some like invasive tree removal, so hanging out with chainsaws. But I learned a lot from people there about sustainability, about environmental stewardship. They had a sister program that we would help with once in a while, where they would do home building, and they did like some straw bale builds and stuff. And I also did a stonemasonry apprenticeship while I was in AmeriCorps as part of the program. So I learned how to lay blocks. I went to the Spanish missions, not the Alamo, but some of the other ones to help like repoint the old stone walls there.
Whoa.
So, and then me and the other guy who was doing a stonemasonry apprenticeship, we did some like cool little builds on trails, like taking really big stones and using wenches to move them and build some like stone benches along the trail and stuff like that. So I learned two things. One, well, I guess three. I learned about like sustainability and environmental stuff in general. I got a taste of doing like hands-on construction work, which I really liked a lot.
Cool.
And I also just really enjoyed working with other cool people who are like had good energy and like to get their hands dirty and yeah. So that I mean I already had no interest in like a regular kind of job, but after that experience I was just like, man, this is like the way to work. So that's one thing I love about being out here now is it's that community and like people who are just like, let's get shit done. Yeah, love it.
Yeah, totally. And then Arcosanti, that's what drew you to Arizona. Can you give us an overview of that, because it is related to architecture and building and sort of thinking outside the box?
Yeah. So after Austin, I lived in New York City for almost 6 years and got really sick of the big city. I went hiking in the Adirondacks with a friend after like 5 years of almost never leaving the city. And it was such a bummer to come back. I was like, how do I live here? This is crazy.
Yeah. What were you doing in New York City?
I was doing music stuff. Like my music in Austin was finally like kind of taking off, which made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to move somewhere where I'm like struggling again.
Okay.
So like New York City, I'll go there. I had some friends in New York City, and it was tough. But so I would water. I had a few jobs. Well, I had two jobs. I worked at a restaurant for a while, but then I also got a gig watering plants in office buildings, which is really interesting in like mostly the financial district of Manhattan.
Okay.
So I was like going into BlackRock's office. I used to water the plants in the president of BlackRock's office. And there's all these office drones, like, making the numbers go up and stuff. And you could tell, like, the vibe sucked so bad.
Yeah.
It was really interesting, though, to get that, like, inside view of, like,
right.
the financial world.
Yeah.
And that was during Occupy Wall Street.
Whoa.
So I would literally be out on the sidewalk and there's, camps and camps of protesters. And then I'd go inside and like be with the 1% and they didn't care at all.
Really?
They had like joke signs about the protesters and like they didn't care whatsoever.
Yeah.
And anyways, but yeah, I got really sick of the city. And then my sister is friends with this band who was hosting a music festival at Arcosanti called Form, and she invited me to come volunteer, and you get a place to stay and you get to watch all the bands. I was like, yeah, it sounds like a good vacation. The place itself was really impressive to me. It's built by designed by this guy, Paolo Soleri, who's this Italian kind of weirdo genius dude who studied under Frank Lloyd Wright, another famous Arizona architect at Taliesin West. And he had this, he was like kind of a visionary architect where he wasn't just, he had philosophies about architecture and the future, and he had like whole new visions for how cities should be designed. But Arcosanti, it's really worth visiting if you ever have the occasion to go there. It's this massive architectural complex, and it's, very artfully designed with all these geometric shapes and stuff. And I also got a good taste of what a healthy kind of community of people is like, because there was maybe 60 or 70 people living there at the time. They cast bronze bells, and they also do ceramic bells, and they make like $1 million a year making these bells, so they sustain themselves with that business. And it was just chill, man. Like the people there was like no drama. Everyone got along. It wasn't weird.
Yeah, right.
Because usually it's one of the two. Either it's like dysfunctional or it's like kind of culty.
Yeah.
Because I when I was younger, I also spent a little bit of time. I went down to Ecuador to do some like workaway type volunteering.
Cool.
And got a taste of like what the kind of more hippie commune vibe is like, which I didn't mind it, but it wasn't for me. But like Arcosanti is like, this is chill. Like it's like, I don't know. Anyway, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then I went there like back to back form festivals, and I would always stick around for an extra week, and I just like help the locals clean up after the partiers, just so I could keep hanging out.
Nice.
And then I took the 5-week workshop that they were offering at the time, which is what you needed to do to become a resident. I was like, I'm going to become a resident here.
Yeah.
This seems like a chill thing. But then after like less than a month, I got a really nice job offer in LA that was going to like pay big dollars. And I was like, all right, I got to go get the money. And went and lived in LA for a little over a year. And yeah, and after that, I think I went back to Austin for like another year and a half, just kind of floating at that point. Got my Sprinter van, was just up in the air, didn't know, and then ended up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you think about going back to Arcosani at some point? Or?
Yeah, it's never been on the agenda, but it's really nice for me psychologically to have that as this backup plan where my life could completely fall apart and I would have somewhere to go where they'd have work for me to do. I'd have a place to stay. Like I'd have a life that would be pretty chill.
Yeah.
So that gives, for me, it gives me like a pretty, it allows me to like fail more spectacularly and take chances because I'm not worried about becoming destitute. Yeah. So I've many, including right now, have lived very close to like the financial edge of comfort, but with minimal stress because I'm just like, and also I'm like 40 and I've just been a poor artist my whole life. So you start to learn like, there's always a way to like make something work. But I love having Arco Santi as this like backup plan. And I get to go visit and I know a lot of the people there. So it's a cool place to visit. Yeah.
That's great. So where did you land in Cochise County when you got here and what was your plan at the time, if you had one?
Yeah, I think I was just going to become a hermit artist person and just like double down on all my creative pursuits. Because I had like, as like ADD artist people are often prone to do, had started a bunch of projects, but would get distracted by some new project. And I wanted to just find a zone I tell people I needed to land the spaceship. So that was kind of the idea is like land the spaceship and just work. And I was staying at this really cool big property. Like I said, it's like 120 acres. This couple built it, I think, starting in the late 70s. And it was this mineralogist couple. And the guy, the husband, he was actually like a world famous mineralogist. He worked for the Smithsonian. There's a mineral named after him.
Whoa.
His name is Sidney Williams. And then one of his students discovered a new mineral and called it sidwillimite. Or yes, sidwillimite. Yeah, that's it. Anyways, him and his wife had a vision. It was a cool place. It was a big greenhouse with like all these citrus trees and other stuff inside. And then there was a kitchen on one side of the greenhouse and a bedroom on the other side of the greenhouse. So every morning you have to wake up and you like walk through this beautiful tropical greenhouse to the kitchen, have your coffee. So yeah, it was really, really cool. It was kind of in disrepair because my friend, she was in contract for the place, but then kind of fell on hard times and moved back to Austin. And some people had rented it here and there, but didn't really take care of it. So my life became pretty consumed with like taking care of this property and fixing stuff. I like unloaded 3 U-Hauls of trash at the dump because there's just crap everywhere. I wanted to make it so that she could rent it to more people. I was going to try to maybe get some more artists out there and stuff. But man, it really took over my life. So my plans, that was just the beginning of my plans being interrupted by other things that kept popping up.
Yeah.
But that was the original plan. Yeah.
And how did activism or the local issues come into play? Or I guess how did your Cochise County experience unfold? I know that you eventually became involved in those issues, but how did that come around? And I guess what else did you get into out here?
Yeah, well, almost around the exact same time, I started meeting some of the local homesteaders, and we call it the South Valley Homestead Crew, had started kicking off. I think it was January 4th of 2021, I want to say. And almost at the exact same time, first I like discovered that there was even a groundwater issue because a friend of mine on the internet sent me a video about like the big industrial dairy and blah, blah, blah. Like he was ABC or something, did like a 20-minute documentary about it. I was like, okay. But I did a little research and I discovered that my area, the Douglas Basin, the dairy is mostly up here in the Wilcox Basin. They're actually quite a bit down there as well. But we had this regulation in place since the 60s. It's called an irrigation non-expansion area. So that means no new acres can be put into like commercial agricultural irrigation. I was like, oh, we're good. And then I heard about some locals, including the guy who I just started working for. I got a job. I worked at the pizza shop for a while, needed to make money. I got a job at this architecture engineering firm doing technical research and writing on like technology, and it's called a techno-economic researcher. But I mean, I had to study kind of everything about the technology they were developing, which is solar panels that you install over canals, which actually now if you drive up to Phoenix, you'll pass through the Gila River Indian Reservation and you'll see they licensed that technology a few years ago and actually installed it. So this was about a year before that. And so that I started learning about water there too, because you're learning about how the canals work, you're learning about evaporation, learning a little bit about just how Arizona works at the macro level, energy transmissions and all these kinds of things. But then him and his then girlfriend, now wife, and some other locals had started this political action committee to create what's called an active management area designation. And that's like an INA, it's like an irrigation non-expansion area, but like more strict in that there's not only can you not put more new acres into production, but there's now caps on how much water can be used per existing grandfathered acre. And then the idea, at least according to most, is that over time you're supposed to reduce that amount of water and try to basically stop groundwater levels from declining. So I heard about that. And I was a little weary of it because, I think a lot of activism can be misguided, where maybe the intention is there, but it doesn't make sense if you analyze it from a technical perspective. So I just started doing a lot of research, and then I started talking to my neighbors more just to learn about water and stuff. And I realized how many of my neighbors' wells have gone dry. I was like, whoa. And then I learned how the INA actually had all of these grandfathered acres that never got put into production. And these companies like the dairy and all these California commercial nut tree investors were finding those acres and buying them. So we actually were still putting new acres into production. Yeah. And an AMA would have stopped that. And there's like a lot of technical stuff to get into with AMAs. Maybe we can get into that. But it basically, after a few months of just doing a lot of heavy research, I was like, I think it's better that we put this into place than not. And one of the main reasons was I had a strong sense of what would happen if it didn't. And I later learned that this is exactly what happened to our neighbors in the San Simon Basin on the other side of the Chiricahuas. They tried to get an INA back in, I want to say 2006, and the Department of Water Resources refused. And then after that refusal, because like the local industrial agriculture got spooked about regulations, they just started buying up land left and right, so that would all get grandfathered in if they'd ever did get regulations. So a big part of my calculation for deciding to support this AMA and getting involved with the activism was that as imperfect as these regulations are, and they are imperfect, they do have problems, the alternative was just worse. It was like I felt very certain what would happen if we didn't get that in place, and that's that there would be a massive buying spree, and then the problem's just that much harder to solve. Because even if you get some better version of regulations, now there's just more people that you're sharing that water with. And so, like, to put it very simply, like, say you have, this thumb represents small farms, and these two fingers represent local, medium, big farms, and these two represent industrial farms. Well, if they all have to like reduce their water by 50% in order for us to achieve stabilized water tables, okay, well, that's that. But then if you have five more industrial farmers, now everyone has to reduce by 75% or whatever, right? And that means the little guys have to reduce more, and the local farmers that have been here for generations have to reduce more. So it's harder for everyone the more people are here that are, taking a piece of the water. So my theory was we'll get the AMA in place, and then we'll work on trying to like improve the regulations and make sure it like plays out as best as we can, and try to get a good AMA management goal and management plan. So I kind of made a commitment to myself and to other people that if I was going to get involved with trying to get this AMA passed, that I was going to do a lot of follow through to make sure it actually shook out in a good way. And so that's consumed quite a bit. It did pass, actually. So they did petitions in both the Douglas Basin and up here in the Wilcox Basin. The Wilcox voters ended up saying no by I think it was like roughly like a 35-65 split. And then Douglas just barely passed like a 55-45 split. And that was in the election season, winter of 2022. So much of the last 3 years has been me doing that follow through that I promised to do, and water has consumed a lot of my life since then.
Mm-hmm. And what did that look like on a day-to-day basis for you? Because I know you've gotten very involved with writing and journalism, which has been really an invaluable resource for me to learn about these topics. How did that come about, and what other ways were you actively working on this issue?
Yeah, so it was a few things. One was that I helped put together this local conference. It was a 2-day workshop. Arizona State University and this group called Lincoln Institute, who are kind of like a land water policy nonprofit based in Arizona. People will say they're New York. Their headquarters are New York, but it was started by the Lincoln family here in Arizona. Katie Lincoln still lives here. And anyways, they were put out a call for applications for, I forget what it's called exactly, but like a rural agricultural community water management scenario planning workshop, some like incredibly long name. But basically it was like kind of what I wanted. Actually, I had ASU and Lincoln Institute, I think as well, sponsored these water smart workshops for elected officials, for like cities and counties and municipal water providers. And I reached out to them and I was like, let's do one of those here. And they're like, well, we did one of those in Cochise County like 5 years ago. And I was like, well, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And you guys really, and I actually wrote them this really long email about how like in order to see change happen in water policy in rural Arizona, you need to do community workshops. And because you have to get stakeholders involved, because the politicians are just going to listen to what the stakeholders say. Which is actually true in rural areas. It's not always true in other parts in the metropolitan areas, but in rural areas, it's actually true. And so I have no idea if this workshop was a response to, like, if I helped to, like, motivate that. I never asked. I thought it would be impolite to ask. But anyways, I was like, well, this is exactly what would make sense for us. So then I had to get buy-in from a lot of people. So I talked to the city officials at Douglas and Wilcox, the mayors and the city managers. I talked to the county, the supervisors, the environmental projects director. I started networking with a lot of the local farmers, Curry Farms right down the road here. some Douglas farmers, and also some of the local residents who were involved in like the groundwater policy, the AMAs, some local like environmentalists type people, activisty type people, and put together an application. And they were like, "No, this doesn't make sense for Cochise County." I was like, "Damn it. This is hard work, man."
Yeah.
Like, and this is all new to me. Like, I'm not used to like writing mayors of towns and stuff. But they were like, we think we want to do Pinal County, or maybe Yuma, but if you can get like a few more people bought in, like maybe we'll take. And so I just kept at it,
Wow.
and eventually they were like, all right, we're gonna do your county. And I was like, dope. And so then I was the local coordinator for that. And they actually gave me a little stipend which was nice because and I should say, like, this was only possible because first I got, for like the 3 months after the AMA got elected, I had to quit my job to like work on campaigning for that full time. I had a little bit of savings, but not much. And then I ran out of money, and I was like, guys, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. And so some of the locals that I was working on that with, who were like retired and have a little bit of extra cash, pulled together for like 3 months and just gave me like a little stipend. So they just funded me basically. And then one of those guys reached out to a national environmental nonprofit called Environmental Defense Fund, and tried to get me some money from them. I didn't have my own nonprofit at the time, and they're like, "Well, we can give you a little bit of money." I think they gave me like $8,000, which lasted a little while. I hit a neighbor's cow and wrecked my car, so I had that 8,000 got eaten up with a new car and blah blah blah. But it floated me for like maybe 6 months. It also led to a lot of conspiracy theory rumors down the road, because I didn't know a lot about Environmental Defense Fund at the time. To me, it's just like, great, $8,000 to just keep doing whatever I want to do. Awesome. But apparently, I don't know. Somehow a rumor got started from that I'm like a George Soros globalist shill who's here to, like, I don't know, bring the new world order, something. There's evidence, apparently. I've never seen this evidence. But that's something you learn when you start doing political activism, is you stick your neck out and people will go for it. It's not fun. It took me a while to like get used to, just psychologically, that idea that like people are saying stuff about people who don't know me, or just like telling other people who don't know me that doing a certain thing and all this. It's just like, it took me a while to just like kind of get to peace with that. Because no one likes feeling misunderstood, but when it's like happening at like a community-wide level and people are like telling these, it's just like, fuck. So I got some rumors spread. Other people, by the way, thought that I was like, when I did this workshop, because we invited the dairy to be a part of it, which wasn't my idea. People were just like, maybe literally the biggest water user in the area should be a part of the discussion. It's like, all right. So other people were like, oh, he's selling out to corporate agriculture. So I was getting it from both sides. But yeah, and then there was that. I spent a lot of time driving up to the Capitol to talk with politicians about water policy, started testifying at some congressional hearings. I call this being the community lobbyist, where it's kind of like what a lobbyist does for a company, which is you go and you talk to lawmakers and officials, except no one pays you money. You're not filthy rich doing the devil's work of like trying to, and then finally started doing journalism and stuff like that, which I can get into.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to hear about that. How did that happen, and what were some of the first things you wrote about?
So after like becoming someone that people like would go to ask questions locally, like on the local Facebook community groups and stuff, I just realized that I didn't want to just be posting like long Facebook messages all the time. So I'm like, maybe I'll just have like a newsletter, and I can just, write whatever I want and people can sign up for it or not. And have some way to like get helpful information out. I also was interested in just doing more research about alternative building and all that kind of stuff. So it was like a good excuse to research that stuff. Uh, so I was doing that, and that was just kind of a more volunteer project. Another thing is after I ran out of money from that grant, I helped the original owner of that big property I was staying on sell the property and got like a pretty nice finder's fee, about almost 20 grand. Uh, and I did buy property, which was nice. I bought 8 acres over in that area. But then I just used the rest to basically keep doing activism work. And because I had the time and money to just kind of do whatever I wanted, I started my little local newsletter. And
Do you want to give a name check or shout out to
oh
that?
yeah, it's called the Ground Party Papers, groundparty.beehive, beehiiv.com. Kind of an annoying platform name, but that's what it is. And I had reached out to this local independent political newsletter called the Arizona Agenda. Actually, I just wrote him an email once, like, you got this fact wrong, some like kind of minor thing. And they're like, oh yeah, well, we don't have a copy editor right now. I was like, do you need a copy editor? And after that, I started my own newsletter, and I sent it to Hank, the head honcho at Arizona Agenda, and he liked it. And he's like, hey, maybe we'll hire you for the copy editor position after all. So I started doing that. Then I started writing the odd article here and there for them. And then this last January, we launched a sister newsletter called The Water Agenda, which just focuses on water policy. And for the first 6 months or so, it was pretty much just me, but now there's a second writer who helps out with that. And yeah, that was my totally unexpected intro into professional journalism.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say you're a really great writer. It's not only informative, but it's somehow entertaining, and just following the whole saga with all these bills and the twists and turns in Arizona water policy, which they're really at the front lines of a lot of these big environmental questions that we're facing. So I highly recommend it, and I just wanted to say you're doing a great job. Also, something I respect about you is you do talk to both sides of the issues. And for your water agenda, you actually interviewed the Attorney General of Arizona. You also interviewed Representative Collin, I believe.
Collin, yeah.
And he's a libertarian and probably has different viewpoints on a lot of these. But I really respected the dialogue you had, and hearing points of view, you can learn a lot and check your own assumptions and arguments. So I think you do a great job with all these things. Just in your personal journey, where are you at now with all this? It's been a few years, you're working on it. I know there's probably a lot of unpaid work and research time that's gone into it. How sustainable is this for you, and where do you see this in your own life going forward?
Yeah, I'll have to say I'm getting pretty burnt out on it. It's what I recently was helping out with this issue in Benson where they're dealing with that aluminum smelter.
Which, by the way, I spoke to Ashlyn Bloom on a previous episode of this, and I did find out about that issue through your newsletter, the Ground Party Papers.
Yeah. So Ashlyn and her mom were two of the leading forces. But I found out about the aluminum smelter or melter, depending on how persnickety you want to be, from this photojournalist in Arizona who was talking with the water manager up in I can't remember the town in Arizona, but anyways, like a little chain of some local here talked to that person, talked to the photojournalist. She said you might be interested in this story. And so then I wrote about it in Ground Party Papers. I posted about it on the local Benson pages, and then the community was like, "What?" Like almost no one knew about it. And the local papers didn't pick up on it, although now I'm wondering if they knew about it but chose not to, because once I started writing about it, and then really actually once I wrote about it and posted about it, and then everyone made a big uproar about it, then they covered it. But they were very defensive about it. And they were like the managing editor at the Herald Review, which is the local paper that covers her for, Benson, was like, calling the activists, the anti-smelter activists, like what do you call them, like tree hugging hippies or something. And it was like, what are they all complaining about? Blah blah. This is good for. So my suspicious conspiracy theory mind goes, did he know about it? But just like they chose to be quiet about it. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I should say, I'm really happy getting to work at the Arizona Agenda because they're like all really cool people, and like I can't even imagine any corruption happening with those guys because it's just like not in their DNA. They would, if they heard about something, they would be so excited to like write about it and just like let people know. Like that's their ethos. But anyways, maybe you can't say that about all journalists. But yeah, when I was working with the Benson thing, like some similar drama happens like down here where people were suspicious of me and some miscommunications happened, and it I don't know, it sucks when you're like working literally out of your own pocket to try to help people deal with stuff, and then some of those same people who you're trying to help are like turn on you. It's just like, man, and I don't get paid, and it's hard, stressful work, and I just was kind of like, all right, I don't know if this is a sustainable path for me financially, psychologically. I hope I get to keep writing the water agenda because at this point I only have to do maybe 2 articles a month, which is pretty doable. I was getting like kind of overloaded with just heavy duty research too, and spending a lot of time on my computer is not my favorite thing. So yeah, getting a little bit burnt out, getting properly disillusioned with what all I could get done as an activist, and also just having all these other interests that like I'm 40, man. I don't have like a lot of runway to like do anything at all. I have to like pick. I want to pick some stuff and commit to that. So then I had to do a deep check with myself. Like, is politics and activism, this kind of political activism, something that I want to double down on and have at least some part of my life, or not really? And I just decided not really. So I still have some like loose ends I feel like I need to tie up. I really want to make like a short video documentary, like just like an educational video about the water stuff here and AMAs, and just like a nice explainer for the locals themselves, because people still ask me questions all the time and people still get things wrong all the time. So I think it just a nice little like thesis about everything I've learned that I think is important and helpful for people to know, all in one, like, I don't know, 30-minute video or something like that. But yeah, I'm trying to slowly back away and get back into some other interests, including the music and stuff.
Yeah, that's great. You said you're working on an album at the moment, which I'm really excited to hear. And that resonates a lot with me. I was just telling you before how I did some activism in Detroit, and yeah, you work on something for 3 years and you sort of expect to have something to show for it. And with politics, you just never know. Like you're saying, when you're trying to organize that event, you could get all these people together and it still could just not happen. And so you should be guarded with your time and do things that are going to reward you. Having said that, I enjoy reading the Water Agenda, and education is a huge part of it. So that's been a really valuable thing. But
yeah, I try to make it entertaining.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to get that compliment, because it can be a pretty, no pun intended, dry subject otherwise, like policy and stuff. So I do my best to like give it some pizzazz and some drama where I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the other issues that you write about in the Ground Party papers is this opt-out law, and just kind of the need to keep it going and make sure that our county supervisors appreciate that this is bringing people to the area. And you are intending to build an opt-out property of your own. Do you just want to talk a little bit about your vision for your own 8 acres out there?
Sure, yeah. So I've got 2 disconnected 4-acre parcels that are close by each other. So I'll develop them one at a time. And the first one, I want to do a lot of experiments basically with excavation. And so submerged buildings, submerged greenhouse, submerged courtyard, like an open air, like 12-foot deep space to hang out in outside. and just do a lot of underground construction. Not in the sense of like tunneling a cave or something, but beneath the surface, relatively deep. And I've gone through a lot of different design ideas for that, so I can't say I'm 100% decided, but I think what I'll probably do is a series of different build types and see which ones work, because I'm trying to like do some new things. Even my friend down in the Douglas area who has an 8 foot deep dome capped home, he did like sandbags or hyper adobe all up to fortify the underground walls. And I want to try to like build at an angle and then just reinforce with like some like ferro earthen plaster and see if that works. It might not. It might have too much moisture cut through. It might have all sorts of things. So I'm definitely experimenting, but I'm gonna do like small builds in different styles, different roof covering techniques, maybe some vaulted structures, maybe some dome structures. One thing I'd like to do that was inspired by Arcosanti is called earth casting, and that's where and I'll have a lot of dirt from digging up all this stuff. And earth casting is where you mound up the dirt and shape it in a certain way, and then plaster over it with cement, and then dig the dirt back out. So it just takes whatever form you build the dirt in. So they did a lot of the stuff at Arcosanti, and especially Cosanti, which is down closer to Phoenix. It's a smaller place that Paolo Soleri built. Really cool. It's the inspiration for Tatooine and Star Wars, like the homestead, Luke Skywalker's homestead. They're actually going to film it there originally, but then some construction started nearby, so they couldn't. And then they went to somewhere in the Middle East, I think. But yeah, so I've always wanted to try to do some earth casting. So anyway, so a series of experimental semi-underground builds is what's on the agenda. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to see it. What, if anything, have we left unsaid? I think we could get into the nitty gritty on all these water issues or all that. I would tend to just refer people to your newsletter. And I guess more broad strokes. I mean, my attitude with activism is, we pay a little bit of our income to taxes. We set a little bit aside for something else, and our time should be the same, I think. I think most of it should go to what you're really passionate about. At the same time, there's a nut orchard in my backyard, basically, and I at least want to educate myself, and, I can show up to a meeting once in a while and get the word out about it. So finding a healthy balance there, I think, is really important, and I'm glad that you are conscious of that and doing that for yourself.
Yeah, I think this would be a good opportunity to like plug the importance of civic engagement, because I'm someone who did not come from a very political background, very very jaded about politics, very uninterested in it for the most part. Especially because mostly only the news tells you about national politics, and that doesn't seem like an arena where I could make much of a difference unless I dedicated my whole life to it. So I was just like, I'm not going to even spend my brain time thinking about politics too much, because I've got this many years on Earth, and I think I could do more fruitful things with them elsewhere. But when I moved here, one of the first things I realized, I joined a bunch of local community Facebook pages, and on the Bisbee community Facebook page, the mayor of the town was like having arguments with a citizen in like the comments of a Facebook post. I was like, that's interesting. So like the politics around here is like very much at the grassroots level. And I remember thinking, if you ever wanted to like do politics, you could do it. There's like a low barrier of entry out in rural small town areas like this, but I still had no interest in politics. And then I got involved with the AMA and the activism. And yeah, now I mean, I don't like begrudge anyone who hasn't taken on my point of view here, but I do try to like express it, which is exactly what you said, which is I think if you want to have a healthy society, you need a healthy government, and you're not going to have a healthy government unless people are doing their part. Like the whole idea of the United States is that it's for the people by the people, and I don't know. I 100% understand because I used to be there. The idea of just being jaded and not wanting anything to do with the clusterfuck of politics. It's just a mess and it's all rigged and it's all broken. And who wants to deal with that? But now I believe, first of all, that if you're not doing something, you should expect that things are just going to get worse. Why wouldn't they? If you're not out there doing your part, the only people who are playing the game are going to be corporations, funded special interest groups, and politicians. So you're going to, what do you expect from that, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that it doesn't take a ton of activism to make a difference, right? For instance, with the Benson situation, people didn't find out about that until 9 months after the P&Z issued the height variance for that building. If someone spent 10 minutes every day just checking the Benson City Facebook or website for the agendas to see what's on the local committee agendas, they would have known about it. They could have spread the word, shown up en masse, and just totally stopped it in its tracks back then. And I have one example. I don't live in Bisbee, but Char Poirier, one of the Herald Review reporters, just mentioned in like a 2-paragraph article that the city of Bisbee was considering banning shipping containers on private property as like a storage units. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And you and I know tons of people who have shipping containers as storage. And so all I did was make a Facebook post on the Bisbee community page that said, the city of Bisbee bought 8 shipping containers for storage last year, but now they want to outlaw them for residents. What do you guys think about that? And it got like 120 comments, and none of them were for it. They were all against it. And then the mayor and city council changed their tune, because before they were like, "Oh, these things are dangerous and they're ugly," and then the mayor was like, "I wasn't for it. I had questions about this." Blah, blah, blah. Right? That was literally a Facebook post. That was literally Shar just writing 2 paragraphs about it in the local paper, and it changed the history of policy there for that specific issue. So one of the things I want to do as kind of my exit strategy from political activism is to create a network of people in each town who maybe like a group of people who can take turns, right? And there's a lot of retired folks out here who just have time to spare. So it's like, all right, everyone, we're going to have a central place where we keep everyone updated on what's on all the local government agendas for P&Z, for all of these things, the county supervisors, the city councils. And I think that, it's an ounce of prevention type of a thing where, but even then, you still have to show up and talk. And I was so happy that you showed up at the opt out October thing at the supervisors. Yeah, I don't know, but on the one hand, I'll preach that gospel and say, yeah, budget a little bit of civic engagement, do something. But I also sympathize with people who are just so burnt out on the way that our culture tends to approach politics, which is inflammatory and divisive and sensationalistic. And there is so much corruption that, hey, like I don't begrudge people who just don't have the energy, especially older folks. Younger folks, I'm gonna like have a little more like, maybe you should do something. You've got energy, you've got some time. But if you don't do it, I'm just going to say you're going to get what you pay for. You're paying nothing into your governance. Maybe you vote. That's really not enough because people are so dissatisfied now, a lot of people in Benson, with the mayor and some of the city council members. Did they research those candidates beforehand? Did they go and talk? Did they do any like civic engagement? I don't know. Maybe some of them did, but I think next time they'll do a lot more because they realize what the consequences are. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. I think just a little bit of staying informed, a little bit of engagement. Show up to 1 or 2, public government meetings a year to say your piece. it goes a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely inspired me. I think I was kind of all or nothing. I'm either all about it or I'm just totally disengaged. And yeah, I agree. I can put a little bit of time into this, and if everybody does it, that adds up to a lot. So, thanks for coming on. You do have a body of work out on the internet that people can go and read your work. Do you want to tell people where they can find you and
Sure.
your writings?
Yeah, so I said the Ground Party Papers. Again, that's groundparty.beehive.com. If you just Google Ground Party Papers, it should come up. And then the wateragenda.substack.com. Well, actually, it's just wateragenda.substack.com. But again, you can just Google Water Agenda and you'll get right to it.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for all your involvement out here. You've made a huge difference personally. I can personally attest to that. And I'm really excited to hear your album and excited to see what you do with your land out there. And
I'm excited about
yeah,
your land too, man. It's great having you out here, and thanks for the conversation.
yeah, of course.